Welcome into the I-80 Boys College Football Show. We got a good one for you today, Chris. It is our first of the season preview and prediction video. We got Florida State and Georgia Tech playing in a neutral site game. Chris, tell me a little bit about the Rambling Wreck.
Absolutely, Christian. Returning 83% of their starters on offense. I'll start with that, dude. That's huge, right? 7 starters back. Haynes King, he's back. Put up good numbers last year, Christian. Over 2,800 yards, 27 passing TDs, along with 650 yards on the ground and 9 touchdowns. So this guy was a monster last year. I know he's not talked about that much, but he had a really good season. They also returned super stud running back Jamal Haynes. Last 6 games of the year, he rushed for over 100 yards, so that's huge. And now wide receiver, Christian, they get back Eric Singleton Jr., man. 48 receptions for 714 yards and 6 scores last season. So, King's got a weapon or two out there at wide receiver. They do return also from the offensive line 4 starters. So, like I said, offensively, Georgia Tech brings back a ton of production there, which I think is huge for this game. Here's the problem, though, the defense, right? Last year, it was pretty bad, especially against the run. Look, they bring in Tyler St. Juste from Duke. This guy coached under Elko. Hopefully I pronounce his name right there. It's got to be better than what they had there last year. And I can't even think of the guy's name. It was so bad. They allowed over 2,700 yards on the ground. That was 3rd worst in the nation. It's going to have to be better. They did get a couple transfer portal players, Christian, from USC and Miami to fill some of those spots. But it's going to have to get better on the back end. We know that. We've seen that. Even in some of those games last year with Georgia Tech, man, they got ran off the field. So, yeah, with that being said, Christian, I'll kick it over to you for Florida State and let me know what you know, man.
Yeah, Chris, listen, I'm gonna just go ahead and get this out of the way. I'm going to try to pronounce it as DJ Ungalele. I'm just going to say DJU, so we all know what I'm talking about, because I'm going to probably butcher his name. So instead of calling him the ukulele or whatever the hell else it is, I'm just going to say DJU. So that way you can come for me in the comments, but I'm not going to mess it up. Florida State, is going to break in DJU. I mean, last year at Oregon State, he put up 2,800 yards and 27 touchdowns. So he didn't have a bad season. Like I said, he's a dual threat guy. I mean, he was very highly touted coming out of high school. We know what he was, supposed to be at Clemson. And I don't think he was bad at Clemson. I just don't think he lived up to the expectations. And I think a lot of people were, upset because you're following Trevor Lawrence. So rightfully so, you'd probably be a little upset. But I look for the running game, to be featured by Alabama transfer Roydell Williams, to kind of help him get comfortable in this one, right? Lean on that run game early. These neutral site games, we know they can be kind of chaotic at times, right? Especially traveling all the way out to Ireland. So I would imagine, just run the football, kind of get him broke in here. Let's kind of see what he can do. But also, receiver Malik Benson, who's also, by the way, of Alabama, I think he's going to help the passing game a lot, to kind of help fill those shoes left behind Johnny Wilson and some of those other guys that have kind of left and gone on to the NFL and just gone elsewhere. I think the receiver-wise, I think they're okay. Look, here's the thing, Chris. Overall, Tech had the 120th ranked defense last year, which should be very favorable for the Seminoles, okay? I mean, just should be very favorable for them, I'd say. On defense, the Seminoles lose a lot, but look, also they get a lot in terms of the transfer portal as well. We talk about it. To me, the biggest matchup for me is going to be Florida State's front 7 creating pressure on Haynes King in this Yellow Jacket offense, right? Tech only allowed 15 sacks last year, Chris. 15 sacks. That was tied for 15th in the country as far as sacks given up, or least amount of sacks given up last year, right? So again, with the losses of Jared Verse and Braden Fisk, those are some big shoes to fill, right? I mean, the likes of Patrick Payton, Joshua Farmer, Marvin Jones Jr. are going to have to step up, and they're going to have to try to create havoc. And to me, I think where this game is, kind of won and lost at is shutting down Georgia Tech's ability to run the football. Georgia Tech wants to run the football. They're not afraid to throw it. They want to kind of run it, control the clock. Florida State, they're going to have to shut that run game down. We also know Florida State finished last year ranked 11th in terms of fewest passing yards allowed, which is good because Tech only was ranked 66th in terms of total passing offense last year. A lot of matchups here you got to look for. Look, we said it overall. Florida State can bottle up the run. I like them in it. Let's segue here, Chris, to our our prediction of this game. Chris, I'll let you start us off here. Big dog, I'll let you tell me who's going to win this and why.
Yeah, look, I thought about this. We've had a lot of time to think about it. We've hyped this game up, right? Week 0. Look, I know Florida State's favored by anywhere you look by 11 to 12, 13 points in this game. My prediction is, Christian, I think this game's going to be close for at least a half. I do. The big thing with Georgia Tech, we alluded to it, they got to be able to stop the run here. I mean, it was bad last year. I'm not trying to bring in last year's stats, whole new team. I get all that, new DC. But they're going to have to slow it down and not allow 5 yards of carry here. I think they can do that for a while. Let's be honest. Florida State's a more talented team. We know that. Probably got the better coach as well. Nothing against Brent Key, but Norvell's done a good job at Florida State. I do think Georgia Tech's offense is going to score some points in this one, but I just don't think it's going to be enough. So my final prediction is Florida State 34, Georgia Tech 24.
Oof. Oh, come on, man. You're doing Georgia Tech so dirty in this one, Chris.
Oh, come on.
Let me learn you something here. Look, Chris, you said it best. I think that, Tech has to be able to stop their run game. They have to force DJU in this first game there with all this hype, the Dublin environment, right? A lot of moving pieces that are coming in for Florida State, all this stuff. Tech's going to have to try to shut that run game down. They're going to have to find a semblance on defense and act like they can play some defense, right? It's kind of like Iowa's offense. You keep thinking every year, hey, they can't get worse or they can't be this bad again next year. They figure out a way to do it. So if you're Tech, you got to figure out a way to play defense. That's Brent Key's, his bread and butter. That's what he needs to be able to do going into year, what is it now, two-ish, right, for him? I know he took over halfway through the previous year and then he had all the last year. So he's got to be able to do that. Here's what I'm going to say. I'm going to get to my prediction, and I got a question for you, Chris. Okay. Give me Florida State 31, Georgia Tech 24.
Ooh. Okay, we're close. I like it, though. Okay.
We're close. Like I said, I think it'll be one possession game. One possession game here. Chris, is there, outside of what we just talked about, is there any way Florida State fumbles this game away? With all these new pieces, is there any way that they don't rise to this occasion?
I think there's a way. Do I think it's going to happen? Probably not. But I think the big thing is, you look at Florida State, right, and at offense, all new pieces there, essentially. This is week 0. I mean, this is not week 6, week 8, where you can build some cohesion and stuff. So that obviously favors Georgia Tech. I do. We talked about Georgia Tech's offense, bringing back a lot of pieces. I think that's huge, especially start of the season. We know that. So I don't see it happening just because of Florida State and the talent level. Like I said, they did do really well in the transfer portal, Christian. I want to flip that question over to you, though. What do you think?
Well, I was going to ask you another question, but that seems kind of weird to ask you a question after asking me a question. So I'll just, I'll say this. I think that, there's absolutely a way, like I said, DJU, he can play up and down, right? And if Tech really improves a lot on defense this year and they get lucky, like we said, this Dublin game that we see every year, weird shit happens with it. And so I think if Tech can run the football, they can kind of control the clock. I think they might push Georgia. I think they might push Florida State a little bit here in this, right? And I'm not saying Florida State's going to be some scrub on defense. I'm not saying DJU isn't going to have a decent year this year. I'm just saying it's a lot. Like we saw last year with Clemson. Were they a bad team? No. They got shell-shocked on the road at Duke last year early. And, if you're Georgia Tech, they're due for a major upset. They're due for a major upset. So we've been saying the same thing about other teams on this channel for a while, and it hasn't really panned out that way. Chris, I want to ask you one last question before we wrap it up here. Is DJ do you like him as a quarterback? Do you think outside of this game and even in this game, what are your thoughts on him as a quarterback this year at Florida State?
I think he's a good quarterback. I don't think he's great. I know we've had this discussion. We've gotten into it a little bit. I thought he took a lot of shit from Clemson fans when he was there. I do. I don't think he played terribly. I don't think he was all their problems. Obviously, look, Kate Klubnik, a guy who I don't think is very good. I thought DJU was better than him. DJ, he played all right at Oregon State. The numbers were good. That was a Pac-12 defenses, though. The ACC, I think, does have better defenses. We're going to find out a little bit here this year about DJU. He's played a lot of football. He was a highly recruited kid. I think his biggest detriment was, Christian, when he came in his freshman year for Lawrence, when he got hurt a little bit, he threw like 5 or 6 touchdowns in that game, and everybody built him up like he's going to, be that next Deshaun Watson, Trevor Lawrence. And I think that hurt him a little bit. I do. And that's not the kid's fault. I like him. Can Florida State win a lot of games with him? Yes. If he doesn't turn the ball over, and they have a couple guys break out at wide receiver, I think Florida State can have a really good year. What's your thoughts on him overall as a quarterback, Christian? I know we talk about him a ton.
Yeah, like I said, I think that the shoes that he had to fill at Clemson were so big. We've seen so many people kind of falter, outside of that, because you go from, whether it was the guy that had to replace, Deshaun Watson, I forgot what his name was, it Kelly Bryant or something like that. There, he had a year to start, and then Trevor Lawrence kind of came in, and then like as a true freshman, it was like he's our guy, right? And then with after Trevor Lawrence left, then you have DJU kind of filling and taking his steps. He's going to be the next guy to take up that mantle. And then, like you said, I mean, he wasn't bad, but he just wasn't what Clemson was used to with their quarterbacks, with Watson and with Trevor Lawrence. And I think after a year or so, what was it, 2 years, I believe there, right? He just was like, I don't think I can really do much. And I can't really blame him. The receiver quality, I think, dropped off there at Clemson. He's going to have much better receivers here at Florida State. That's not even a non-negotiable. I mean, these will probably be the best wide receiver he's had in college, up until this point, from a receiver core standpoint. And I mean, the run game at Clemson was pretty good. The run game here was pretty good. I would make the argument the run game at Oregon State's pretty good. So now that he's got receivers, that pressure is back on him, similar to how it was at Clemson, right? Because now everything he does is going to be put under the microscope. I think as a quarterback prospect, DJU's not bad. Do I think he's going to be one of the 5 best quarterbacks coming out of this class? I don't. I think he can be a really good college quarterback, though, and I think he can find himself in kind of a mid-round situation if he plays well this year.